Yeah, so we're approaching about 2 years ago now when I released that one Minecraft video on my main channel, where I talked about a bunch of different stories, really my whole experience with the game, seen predominantly through multiplayer servers. I think there was some stuff related to single player that I was talking about, but mostly it was all multiplayer servers, things with friends, really laggy servers from back in the day, because like one of my friends would be running it off of a laptop from like 2011, I think. But yeah, there are some stories from that video that I didn't actually tell, and then there are, well, really like one story that I can think of that came after that. That wouldn't have made in the video anyway, because, well, it happened actually right as the video was releasing, funny enough. So this server is a very recent one, but is probably the server that I am now the most proud of for what I was able to accomplish on it. So the deal with that original 2019 server is what I loved so much about it is that it was a very busy server, it was a very active server, and it was a relatively speaking long-running server. Now, of course, there are probably like YouTube Minecraft servers that lasted longer, like individual seasons of, say, Minecraft. This particular one, for my friend group and how like far the reach of it actually was, where it was people that, like, I was meeting people that I otherwise wouldn't have met because of this server and spending a good amount of time with them. But what was special about this ultimately was that this was like the last kind of high school summer. So some of us were working jobs. I was, when I wasn't working, I would be playing this server because none of us really had obligations. Only maybe the slightly older ones of us, the ones that were already in like university. But besides that, the timing of this was honestly pretty perfect. Because if you think about it, even though you obviously matured more after that, we aren't dealing with, say, a group of 5 11-year-olds that are just yelling at each other about the game. One that has a microphone that sounds like it was ripped out of their Xbox. Another using their webcam mic that sounds like it was ripped out of 1992. And so on and so forth in Skype. I preface all of this because what happened on that server was a community. It was like the coming together of a bunch of people to have big projects, to build big things. And by the end of that server, even though there was a lot of stuff that was still kind of incomplete, it was the best that we had gotten out of like the years of trying it. Because obviously what will happen is Minecraft isn't something that will last forever. There are people that will just get bored with it. One story that I'll just sum up right now that happened is I at one point hosted a modded server, had a bunch of people come on, and then like one person that I thought was going to be playing the server for at least a week, on the second day was like, all right guys, I'm done. You can have the resources at my house. And I asked him, like, what do you mean you're done? How are you done? Did someone's car get broken into? What the fuck? Okay, hold on a second. Anyway, yeah, he had sped run the mod mechanism. Now for the actual server that I was really proud of. So this was not a server I ran. This was, again, a friend of mine named William that ran the server. And this server lasted a pretty long time. And it was a very interesting server because it started off initially as a snapshot server, actually. We hadn't done something like that in a few years. I think the last time we did that was, I don't even remember the year, probably 2015, something like that. But this was this was like the very late snapshots, maybe even just the pre-releases for 1.18. The update that was going to add in, or at that point for us, had already added in the insane cave generation, the big world height, all of that. It was the update that was going to change Minecraft, and basically did, because it made the game, frankly, feel more modern, because you can now build bigger shit. And bigger things we were trying to build. Because the thing I had learned at that point is I realized if I was going to stay interested in Minecraft, I cannot build shit that's just tiny. It needs to be huge. Because it's a goal that I can constantly look at and say, alright, I'm going to mine everything that I can for that. So I came up with the idea of building a space elevator where I wanted to go from about -64 to positive 320 or whatever the height limit is, where the idea was that it was a big tube that was I don't know how many blocks wide it was, like the radius of it, because it was a round tube that would go from the bottom of the world to the top that had soul sand at the bottom, and then it was filled with water, and you could just go all the way up, put on a pair of elytra wings, and then the idea, even though I don't think it would have worked out this way, but it still would have been a cool structure anyway, because I kind of knew Minecraft doesn't work this way, unfortunately, but the idea was to almost have like the infinite portal effect, where you just keep building momentum, and you end up getting to like terminal velocity, you shoot right out of the tube, you end up going up to say like 400, and then from there you can just fly to wherever you want to go. That was the idea that I had for this thing. And unfortunately, it never really turned into anything other than just having a big tube that had some like copper rings around it and was made out of deep slate. Oh yeah, and had some glass on the like surface side of it. But what it was is it kind of became just my mine shaft for the whole server. So when I was getting specific resources, so if I was getting diamonds and whatever, like iron or copper, I would just go to caves and go spelunking, because that became the new meta with this update, because you just get these huge fucking caves where you can see everything, and you can easily get resources that way. One of my friends on there told me, hey, here's what you gotta do, because like I said something like, yeah, I don't have a lot of diamonds, I have like maybe 20. And he's like, the fuck you mean you only have 20? Because I guess he had like 200 or something. He was just, like, everyone else on the, I'm getting ahead of myself, but everyone else in the village was like, wait, you're the poorest among all of us, and yet you're building this thing up here, which I'll get to in a minute. Yeah, he tells me, just get, like, fortune pickaxes or silk touch, because I always end up doing silk touch for this kind of stuff, especially because of just how the blocks now break, especially with iron, right, where you can actually fortune the, like, iron and get more chunks out of it. So I would always silk touch, and then put it into, because I think I bought, like, a shulker box from that, I would then just pack stuff into there, go spelunking for a while, then come back, and he said, yeah, just do that, and have a nighttime, night vision potion. Did that, and basically came back with, I think, like, 40 diamonds or something insane. Anyway, all of that is going on much later on, but initially the project for this was going to be that I was going to build a mountain house, because there were so many mountains. The region I had found was really close to spawn, but I looked at it and thought, holy shit, there's just this mountain over here that is surrounded by kind of a valley, like sunken valley with a darkwood forest in it on that side, and this other side there's a little river here that unfortunately does the stupid ass Minecraft thing where it just ends, and then like it basically, if the water level, because of how the thing generates, if the water level was like 2 blocks higher and you had maybe floodplains and shit, you'd actually have a river. But unfortunately, that's not how the game works or even generates that way, unfortunately. Yeah, you had this really nice looking landscape, and I thought, okay, well, there are people over on that side of the river. I'm over on this side. I'll build all my stuff here. They will hopefully build their stuff. We won't attack each other. We won't interfere with each other's business. We'll be cool. And over time, we'll have a really cool area. Because I had developed this plan of, there's going to be this big space elevator here that was also going to have other tubes on the side of it attached to it. Because I wanted it to be where you could also come down. Because just having soul sand there and have it where you can only go up, well, that's a useless elevator. But have it where you have the, like, express tunnel, or a tube, and then have other, like, local tunnels, kind of like in a rail system or anything like that. That was the design idea, where I wanted it to just have these, like, water tubes that go from the bottom all the way up. It was integrating a lot of different ideas I had started developing and implementing into my builds at this point, because there was a build that I had maybe a year prior. Actually, no, earlier that year, where I was building this one castle kind of thing. I was calling it a castle because it was just made out of, like, I think diorite. So I was calling it the White Castle. And one of the things I did was I had a spiraling design going on with it, but I also installed elevators into it. All these different ideas I was implementing into my builds, and it'd been like refining over the past couple years. This was supposed to be the culmination of all that. Unfortunately, I kind of gave up on that, because this also expanded into me trying to build a small little town on this river. I was actually working on improving the coastline of the river to add in a retaining wall, because I think I might have had the idea of even raising the water level a little bit. Because, yeah, that's just the problem with the Minecraft world generation, where you don't want the water, you can't raise the water now, right? Because you have, what, like 13 years? Well, I guess in beta it was 1 block lower. But you have this standard way, it's always like level 64 is where the water table is. So if you raise it to 66, it's like, what the fuck did you do here? See, so I was going to do it manually and then just have like river locks every now and again, because I just wanted this really nice looking place. And this allowed me as well to fuck about with like the moss blocks, because I was using moss blocks for construction for this, because it was really easy to fill in stuff with moss, then put in the retaining wall, then dig out all the moss by basically just breaking it with your fist. And then from that point, because I had designed a wall, if I remember, I'll put maybe a screenshot or even some footage of this, because I also had like my redstone wall at this point where I was designing some stuff in it, I think. Yeah, I had designed the walls to have lights in them, so I was putting those in. They were going to be like redstone lights, daylight sensors, all that kind of stuff. All of this, though, was not going to ever be completed, because at some point I decided, alright, it kind of sucks just being here alone, because a little incident happened probably the first week, maybe even first couple days. There was a little incident that happened that, fortunately for me, didn't involve me at all, but the people that were on the other mountain, like, there was some weird-ass griefing or something that happened where people had to, like, there were, I think, a person or two people that got allowed into the server. As it turned out, they were using X-ray. I don't remember how the fuck they caught them doing this. I think, I'm pretty sure it was just a case of like spectator mode. But that was just something that was decided, okay, these guys joined and then used X-ray, we're banning them. But the problem is that the guys that were over on the mountain, they weren't comfortable having their shit over there because they didn't want to get tampered with people at spawn. And the thing is that they kind of, like, they already, because I knew who this group was, they had already come to that realization in previous servers, so I kind of get why they would risk it, because they probably thought, okay, well, we'll actually have a community this time near spawn where people will be cool, but people weren't cool, or these two people weren't. Besides that, I want to point out that this is a really good example of, like, the one bad apple spoiling the bunch, because I don't think anything happened afterwards that was like that. That was the thing, is that this was really the one incident that I can think of immediately. I mean, there were a couple of other odd run-ins, like, there was one of the people I was working with, like, he almost had a weird argument with these guys. I don't know why. But in terms of actual malicious activity, this was the one time this happened on the server, which was odd. Because even the 2019 server, there were a couple of things that happened throughout it. Hell, there was a point where I actually got banned because, like, people thought I was doing some dumb shit, and I wasn't. Because I had stayed on AFK for, like, a whole day. And that happened to be the one day when some dumb shit happened and couldn't really prove my innocence. And what was insane about this is I actually had recorded because it was the fact that I had my account on there doing AFK stuff. I think I had actually recorded that, but then deleted the footage. But it ended up coming up a couple days after. So it's like, well, shit. Or maybe, I don't remember. This was a while ago. I don't remember the timeline events. Anyway, I'm now about 15 minutes into the video. Let's actually get to the good part. So, what actually made me proud about this server is, at some point, obviously I'm in a Discord call with some friends, and I'm hearing what they're doing at their village. I'm thinking, okay, obviously you guys are doing something, and I've been invited over to the place a few times to check it out, and at this point, I'm looking at what they're doing, and I'm like, holy shit, you guys are doing a good job. They had a storage warehouse, they had their houses, obviously. They were working on a thing up in some mountains that was going to be their big mining area. You had all this shit going on, and I was like, okay, you know, I'm kind of bored being alone. Would you guys be fine with me joining you guys? They said, yeah, and I ended up moving all my valuable shit. I still kept the old base, because what that ended up becoming, because I think at that point I had hit deep slate and began excavating a bunch of deep slate, that became my deep slate mine, because all of my buildings, at this point, I fucking fell in love with deep slate tiles, because so many of my buildings, in fact I think all of them, used them for the walls. I used deep slate tiles for the walls. I used I had this interesting like configuration for the ceilings where I think I had like 3-block thick ceilings, but it's because I had a top slab and then airspace, and then the top slab again for the floor. The reason for that is because it allowed me to, in the future, have either redstone between the slabs or have redstone and lights in there. So it made the building also artificially taller, but it also made it where you could actually go in and do proper wiring. Because the problem is in Minecraft, you don't have like hollow blocks kind of. You don't have micro blocks really, is what it would be the preferable thing here. But doing it this way, it actually allows you to put redstone in if you wanted, and a couple of other things. So I end up working on this house, and the thing is that this house was not perfect. There were things that I fucked up on it. Like, as an example, I didn't really plan for elevators immediately, and I realized afterwards that's like, well shit, where the hell do I put the elevators? So I had to kind of just tack the elevators onto the side of the building, and it looked really bad. I was able to get it to look fine afterwards, but it was luckily not on the front of the building. It was actually like in the back in a spot where no one was ever going to see it really. There was some bullshittery that I pulled with this house though. Like, I'll fully admit that, because what ended up happening was I told the two of them, because I was at this point their village had maybe like 7 people in it, maybe close to 5 actually. So I might have been like the 6th or 7th person that actually joined their village to build stuff. They already knew that I could build stuff. I wasn't just going to build something ugly and call it a day. One of the people there built a really, really janky looking treehouse, because the bottom of it got blown up. Somehow I think a creeper or two. So they knew I was going to build something that wouldn't look terrible. But when I told them, yeah, it's just going to be maybe about like 9 by 9, 11 by 11, you know, something kind of like that. Fast forward about 3 days. One of them comes on and is like, bro, that is not 9 by 9. That is like 40 by 40. What the fuck is that? Because what I had done is I began building because it was a mountainside, so I began planning out the property size, because I made it clear, I thought I made it clear to them, like, okay, the building's not going to be too big, but I do want some land around it, because it'll look better that way. Because if you have a big-ass house, and you have, like, not even a big-ass house, but you have, like, a medium-sized house, but you have some land around it, you can put trees, and because it's also on the mountain, who's going to be building there, right? Like, I wanted to reserve a bit of land there, that way I could make it look really nice, that way I could make it fit in, because I also had, like, a little bit of a nature obsession going on with this. I wanted to use some bamboo with this, because I had used bamboo on a previous server where I had fucking, like, large chests full of it, because I had a whole spot that was, like, 20 by 20, I had infinite fucking bamboo to the point where it was actually lagging that area. And, like, there were people around, they're like, okay, man, you gotta trim the bamboo and reduce it. So I eventually did that. With this, I was going to use it sparingly, but I was going to focus a lot more on trees, because I think, what was it, the mangrove trees? I wasn't going to use them on my property, but I was going to use a mixture of, I think, spruce trees and, I think mostly spruce and oak, actually, was what I was going to use for that. So very classic old school trees. But yeah, no, I did go into this saying, yeah, it'll only be like 9 by 9, 11 by 11 maybe. And then I did end up building a property, like reserving a property footprint that was probably like 30 by 50, that then had a house that was about 25 by like 30 or something on it, with support beam pillars on the side of it. Like, what is it? Like, okay, I had the actual wooden columns to support the house that were the structural beams of the house because of just how I built the house. But then I also had a wraparound deck that wasn't like 2 blocks thick. No. It was 5. I made sure you could have multiple people walk past each other around that. And I also added underneath of it, on like the like stone wall supports, I thought, okay, well, we're on a mountainside. If there's erosion, which happens with mountains, it could, like, fuck up the beams. It could cause them to actually collapse, and the house just goes down the hill. I don't want that. So I'm going to put up a retaining wall, and I'm also going to support the retaining wall with like copper buttresses, which if you look at like Gothic architecture, which this house was inspired off of, you can see exactly what it does, where it's like a support thing for a wall. I went fucking insane on this, where it took me a solid month to build the house, and I was living outside of it basically, because the start of the porch, I had all the chests, I had furnaces, I had the like crafting table. At this point, I had an enchantment table. Actually, no, I didn't have the enchantment table there yet, I don't think. That was still at my old base, but I had the anvil. So I have all this shit that's just outside, and it's very well lit up, too. I think I only nearly blew up a creeper near my shit once, I think. The house got built, and you can see it on screen right now, because I took so many photos of it, because I was so proud of this thing. This was the biggest house that I had built, and it is kind of a callback, and I don't know if I have the photos of this, but it was a callback to something I was trying to do on another server I was on just months prior, where it was the White Castle, but what I did was I actually cleared out a whole area where I was going to build, like, a mansion wing to the castle. That was actually bigger than the footprint of the castle, so that didn't make a lot of sense. I was going to have a rail line also run under it, but unfortunately that server just died, so yeah. I mean, that whole, that whole fucking, like, that thing was just insane. Because I didn't stop there, and the server didn't just die after that. It kept going. Where, after I finished the house, or as I was finishing it, I started to develop this idea with a few of the people around, where I took the initiative to do this, because I had one little pathway going up to my house. I thought, alright, that's nice, but a lot of the places that I was going to was right at the bottom of the hill I was on. So I thought, okay, well, I don't want, like, climbing back up is a pain in the ass, because, you know, you can always fall down the hill in Minecraft and be fine. Climbing back up is the problem, because you have to go all the way into town and then come all the way back into town, so I decided I'm going to build a road that, like, zigzags up and down this mountain. I'm also going to make it look pretty good. And the original plan for this road is, as I was building it, I got to a point where I had wrapped it around and then kind of just had it go to where, like a straight line to wherever the pathway was supposed to go. Eventually, someone went in and changed that up some, and then I finished cleaning it up a bit to basically make it where there was a very ideal spot in the middle of this very flattened valley at the bottom of my mountain. I say it's my mountain. It was actually just the village's mountain, but this specific part of it that I was overlooking. And eventually, I actually took over that spot and started building my own town, because I wanted to build and I actually convinced them of this as well, and they were like cool with this as an idea. I wanted a village there that was more industrial looking, because the actual village, the biggest problem was as well, besides me having this giant footprint, is I have this massive structure that is actually the tallest structure in the village. Even when you adjust for the height difference, like the fact that it's on a mountain, it was the tallest building because I put a giant tower on top of it. What ended up happening was, you know, I'm building dark, like, buildings that are Gothic looking. Meanwhile, the town buildings are like stone, wood, like the normal stone in the game. Maybe some copper, stone bricks probably. So it was a bit of a building code problem that they weren't initially too much of a fan of. So, like, I knew I had kind of annoyed them. Hell, I'll even say that I probably pissed them off with that. But I then suggested, okay, well, how about this? Because I'm noticing that there are several building styles that are coming up anyway. I'm not going to change mine because I like how it looked, but what if I built more stuff in this valley that complements what I'm building, okay? And it will all be on this side. It will all be over here. And then, because I also had a couple of other different building plans, but this was the main one that actually, like, came to fruition. And basically, I build stuff in this area that matches this style, so it looks normal. My house doesn't actually just stick out how much it does. Because here's the problem, and this is why I think I was able to get away with doing this and just imposing this, and they were fine with it, is, again, A, I knew how to build, but also B, I wasn't the only sore thumb in town, because right by my house was this giant copper statue that was supposed to be just a Steve statue made out of copper that one of my friends was working on, and everyone else in town was also giving him shit for this, because it's like, look man, when are you going to finish the Steve statue? And I had put my house right up around there, and I think even people were agreeing that my house looked so much better than the weird wireframe Steve statue on this mountain that was supposed to be overlooking town. By the way, that statue never got finished. But yeah, that allowed me to be able to build this town and actually have like some pretty decent ideas explored with this. Because what I ended up doing is I ended up building a really nice looking tree farm. It was still manual, it wasn't automatic, but because I didn't want it to be purely automatic for this one. I was going to have an automatic one probably at some point, but I wanted this one to be purely like inefficient, because you maximize efficiency in Minecraft, you end up with shit that just looks terrible, because you look at it, it's like, oh cool, it's a machine. I was going for the purely aesthetic thing, where if you have these, like, 5x5 green pads that you just grow trees on, with the slabs over them, it also ends up resembling, like, old-school Minecraft anyway. Pays homage to that, in my opinion, while also still functionally having the tree farm there. But having to go around and, like, deforest, like, the side of this mountain that was also kind of a sacred mountain for the village. No one was really allowed to build on it all that much, but I was able to build at the foot of it. There were other projects I was working on too at this time. One of them, I guess two of them I should point out, because these are now towards the end of the server. So I had Journey Map installed, so I could see all the rivers and everything, and I realized that I kept tracing the rivers, and I looked at a, like, bay or something that we had. Not too close to the village, but you could fly there in a minute. If that, probably 20 seconds. So this bay, attached to it had a mesa biome, a desert biome, some plains, mountains, a bunch of stuff. I'll put some pictures up here and maybe even some other things around it, because there were a lot of ideas that I was working on with this particular thing. I was really obsessed, this is why I'll say, I was really obsessed with doing roads around this region, because I was thinking we were going to stay on the server for like a year. I wanted to have little, like, pockets around the whole village that had, a central, like, city, really, at this point. I wanted little bits of civilization around the place they could go out to, because the idea was, I think all of us were slowly coming up with the idea of what I will just call RP elements in the server. And what I mean by that is world building. What I mean by that as well is even having a boat race. This is what I'm getting to. We had a lot of different stories that we were just naturally developing with this world. So we began doing things like this. So I was trying to build a bunch of roads that just went out to places that also connected pre-existing villages, and end up even drawing a map in Photoshop. I don't know where the hell that went. I might show that as well if I still can find it. But one of the things that I decided to do is I looked at this map and realized, oh, if you just put a connection through this forest and through this little bit of mountain right here, you actually have this massive-ass ocean that we have a, like, mob spawning out in the middle of. This big-ass ocean would actually be connected to this bay with just these two connections. And on top of that, if you also cleaned up, like, some random village debris that was on this very shallow river and cleaned that up, you'd actually have two ways to this ocean, if I remember correctly. There were little things where I noticed that the water was almost pure, like, completely connected. So that became my idea, where I wanted to build these two canals, because it would have been the most direct way, but then eventually, whenever I came about to actually clean up these villages for these roads, I would go to that village on that river, clean it up some. I think I may have actually already been doing that, because I do remember, I just remembered that I was building a bridge at some point. And I want to add in, one of the problems I had with building all this stuff is I kept running out of oak logs, or just wooden logs for things. Now I'm remembering a few things. I remember I made a honey farm. I don't remember why I needed honey. I think I was going to do something like this on the world, where you could turn it on, because we were building, like, physical trains to run on rails that we had built. This is why I'm saying with world building. Like, someone was in charge of this. They were doing this. Meanwhile, I was also designing a bridge to cross over this big valley that was going to have multiple levels to it, because I wanted the decorative trains underneath the bridge, but then I wanted the functional pathway. But then also under that functional pathway, I wanted possibly rail lines, where the idea was that you could drive your car across it. That was the whole idea for this. I really wanted this bridge to look fucking incredible, and then fill in the valley under the bridge with some towns. Because seriously, picture this. Like, picture a bridge going over this valley where on one end, or on both ends, you have, like, neighborhoods with houses and stuff, but then underneath, you have these, like, I'm picturing almost Italian villages, kind of like that, or just something very European. I had finished that canal, that very small one, that was a bit of a prototype, just to see the idea. Because it was maybe 40 blocks I was digging out in length. But I built this, it turned out pretty decent. So I decided to take on the idea because I think I surprised everyone with this. And they said, oh yeah, this is a wonderful idea, do it. I then started working on the Southern Canal, where this canal was going to be the one that connected all the rivers around the village directly to the bay. Because that was the problem, is that there wasn't really a direct river that connected the bay to these rivers. What I did was I began digging that out, and I was going to make it really wide. I was going to make it also pretty, like, decently deep. That way, it's not just one block. It's deep enough where it looks like it would be a canal. Maybe we could, like, eventually put ships and stuff in it. I don't know. Just the idea was there to have a canal to connect these two things. And while this was going on, one of the people came up with the idea of, okay, well, what if we had a boat race through these canals? Because everyone really liked the idea of connecting up the water, because even though all of us had elytras, there is still, like, an appreciation for transportation on these servers. And honestly, it is this kind of thing that makes me fucking wish that elytras weren't added. Like, I love them, but they have made it where rails don't do anything. Like, now rails are only in redstone machines. And I remember there was a snapshot a while ago that was going to make rails really fucking fast. Like, they had removed the speed limit for rails, but the problem is, because of how, like, unoptimized Minecraft is, you weren't going to actually be able to use them properly, because you would get to the end of the chunk, lag for 10 seconds, then get to the next chunk in like half a second, lag, and yeah, it wouldn't have worked, unfortunately, unless you just greatly overhauled the code base of Minecraft. I was so sad when they removed that, when they, like, patched that bug, because I think it was a feature that they were trying out, but it wasn't, because even, like, the trains could derail too. That was the other thing. So it was actually really cool, because it was kind of adding in railcraft to the game, and then they got rid of it because they decided, no, we don't like this. So yeah, I don't remember what this was. This was, I want to say, like 1.8 or something. It was a long ass time ago. Yeah, anyway, the last thing that I remember doing on that server was maybe doing some stuff with honey. Because I was breeding bees, I was trying to just make a fuck ton of beehives, because I was going to automate that shit. I had one level done that was making, like, it was, like, I was getting to the point where I could expand the thing almost exponentially because of how much prep work I had put into all this. Because I was just breeding bees, trying to have them where you could have an apartment block, effectively, of bees that are just making a lot of honey that you could then turn into blocks, a lot of honeycomb that you could then use, I think, for, like, candles and stuff. I can't quite remember. All that kind of stuff. I wanted to really optimize, because someone on the server had already been doing some beekeeping stuff. I wanted to go ahead and just be the one that made the machine that mass-produced this shit. Because at this point, everyone else in the village was mass-producing things. One person was mass-producing concrete. Another person, I think, was mass-producing glass, because their building project was building, like, a modern city that had a bunch of glass buildings. And yeah, because of this, I wanted my own thing to try and sell, because I think someone had already begun doing the tree automation. And that was something that I was going to, at some point, do. I think I was also going to do, like, moss automation, maybe. Because, again, moss is a really good block for filling in shit. But yeah, no, server ended up dying at that point. We are now at this point, probably at the end of the summer. This server actually lasted a bit longer and was played a lot more regularly than even the 2019 one, strangely. Even though it still felt like that I hadn't really interacted with another half of the server. Like, alright, if I can find the footage of it, I'll show it right now. I, at some points, began just going to the other, like, major base that I knew was on there, like the other major village that people were at, as they were offline and just snooping around. Because I wanted to document it. I wanted to really document the server because I realized that there was a lot that had been going on. I wanted to have some kind of way of it being preserved, that way, you know, for future posterity. I just don't know where any of that footage is at this point. Yeah, no, but the server got shut down. I am pretty sure it is gone now. There are backups of it, I'm sure, but I do remember that my friend that runs the servers, he basically announced, yeah, we're done with this world. For some reason, like, he and another guy went in and just blew everything up. And like, I was kind of annoyed with that because I'm like, well, you could have at least invited me. Like, what the fuck? So that was annoying, but because I wanted I would have at least liked one last look at it. Because I'm fine blowing it up if there's a backup, but yeah, I've never had access to any of those backups, really. I've only really had my screenshots, so. And also my extensive log of footage, which, now that I mention that, I've already, so here's the deal with that footage, because I could be using it in this video. I have compressed the fuck out of it. It is going to be it is retarding gigabytes, and I do not want to have to decompress that footage, because it would be terrible. So instead, I will just use these screenshots. I was going to do, I think at this point, I still had the idea of continuing the Absolute Brawl multiplayer experience on the main channel, because at this point, just for a tiny bit of context, I guess, at this point, my idea for the main channel is I was going to do 2 videos a month. That was always going to be the plan, but then have it where if the big video I couldn't complete, then I could have a fallback video on a multiplayer experience video. So after the Minecraft video, I did the Left 4 Dead multiplayer experience videos. Those were some fun videos. No one watched them. So at that point, I realized, well, if I'm going to put this much time into editing fucking Left 4 Dead 2 footage, and no one's going to watch it, then I might as well put all that time into making, like, the RPG Maker, the first RPG Maker video, the second one, Knee Streamer. I might as well just do that then, because how I viewed it, it was now taking the amount of time that I could spend editing and pulling it away from what was bigger projects. And I think I made the right call on that one, because I ended up making some pretty good videos that year. And I also, the annoying thing with the Left 4 Dead thing is that it was a lot of footage I had that got, like, lost, because apparently OBS kept having encoding overloads during it. So that was really fun. So the actual selection of, like, Left 4 Dead campaigns that I could use for that video, or videos, were only those, even though we had recorded, like, I don't know, like, I think we recorded 6 different campaigns or something, and, like, 4 of them weren't usable, or however, I don't remember. Was each video a campaign? We're talking about a thing I edited over a year and a half ago. So anyway, that's why I think that also answers why I do what videos I do on this channel, where none of the videos on this second channel should really take a really long time to make. And that is why I will probably not do a video like that car seat headrest one again, where I tried to do the, like, live reaction thing, because that one took forever to edit for some reason. I also wasn't editing it all that much. Over time, I was really slow with that, but it was still not really an easy thing to just edit. But then any other gameplay video that I have made on this channel, like the Doom ones, were really, like, straightforward to edit, I felt, much more than the music one for some reason. So because of that, my general rule is that it shouldn't take me more than 3 hours to make a video for this second channel. Because of that, that's the type of stuff that will end up on this channel and not on the main channel. But the main channel, there is no editing cap on that. Just video has to be, like, to my satisfaction, basically. That's why I make the certain videos I do and don't anymore, because of how long it takes to edit. Because, yeah, I cannot do a big editing project along with another one that is supposed to be, like, the bread and butter of the main channel. And that was something I decided back then, and it was why that the server I just talked about, I had to talk about now and not actually make videos of. Because, yeah, that was also the other thing, is that any of my Minecraft videos also took a long time to actually make. Because there was so much footage to go through, and also having to weave, like, a coherent narrative with it, because that was sort of what I did with those videos. It also frequently ended with the servers just dying out, and it also was getting to a point with some of the footage where there was footage that was like 2 years old. So you can just see at that point why I stopped doing those videos, even though I still have a lot of the footage. I think I do. Actually, I think some of the footage I have lost, but that's for another time probably. Anyway, subscribe to the channels. I'm out.